maybe someday it becomes vitally important that we release every single monster all at the same time.
And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 47. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite music artists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this very podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my very good friend,
Matt Runquist. Hey, Travis, how you doing? You know, I gotta say, before I get into what we listened to this week, I sometimes regret committing to the Matt Runquist, right? There's times
you can feel free to change it as much as you want.
When I don't want to do it, but I feel like committed to the bit now. So, anyways.
You will notice I do change up a little bit the way I do that whole intro, so you can feel free to change your thing.
Yeah, well, you're a better
Try something else. What have you got? What have you got from me? Try something else. And with me, as always, is my very good friend,
Matt Runquist.
No.
Yeah, see, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Yeah.
You know, I think maybe what you might be bristling to is it maybe feels false to you. Like it feels like you're putting it on a little too much.
But it's not false. I love seeing you, Travis, and I love chatting.
I do love seeing you too.
Yeah.
But maybe it's the Matt. Maybe you feel that is insincere somehow.
Oh, it's definitely not.
Inside.
It's not at all insincere. Oh. All right. But you know what, Travis? This week, you listened to some music by the indie rock band Quasi, and I watched the movie Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I'm very excited to talk about both of those things. But before we do, how have you been?
I've been real good. It was Thanksgiving week.
It certainly was.
I had my daughter and her fiancé here.
Her affianced.
That's what I said last week, but I realized that sounded fancy, and I figured I would be less fancy.
A little insincere, even.
Yeah, a little insincere. So no, he is French. He's a French national. So
it was appropriate then.
It was appropriate, yeah, and. We had a really wonderful time. We got to go to the Milwaukee Public Museum. We went down to the lakefront. We did a little bit of shopping. They're actually getting married pretty quickly here for legal reasons, right?
Oh, zut alors.
Yeah, zut alors. And then they're going to have like a big party later, right? So we did a few arrangements for the legal wedding, and that was pretty fun.
Cool.
The dogs are doing great now. They're enjoying. You remember I told you we cut a hole in the back of the house and put a door in it,
which was actually, we were talking about the whole ear thing and how Bonehead got coneheaded, and I was wondering if it had to do with the door. Like you used to have to like kind of like plan.
We used to be. I think there used to be a little tighter supervision, and there is now, right? But we maybe got a little bit lax for a few days, and we definitely, or Bonehead's ear definitely paid the price. So, but that's all going really well. Everybody's really well trained. They're behaving around one another. That's all good. So, and his stitches are out, so that's really nice.
Good. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. So I'll bet he's more comfortable with that.
He's quite a bit more comfortable, yeah.
So all of our dogs are, at the moment, good.
Yeah, all good. All good.
Excellent. Yeah, so I had an interesting Friendsgiving for myself, but otherwise I worked a lot. So I worked at the new retail job Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then that was last weekend.
Which was 2 days ago.
How long has it been since we've talked? Oh, was it?
It's been like 10 or 11 days since we last talked.
Okay, so it has been longer than normal since we've talked because we've had to rearrange schedules because of my work schedule. And it feels like so, but I've been working so long, no off days to speak of. And often I'm working the TV job and my retail job, and then poor Coco is just getting walks in between, like before work, between work, after work.
Nice.
And so I feel bad for her, but otherwise everything is going pretty well.
Well, Well, I would say the nice thing for her is that you're paying off her veterinary bills and giving her the best life you can give her. So, sometimes you got to sacrifice for the kids. So that's just what you're doing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. One thing I wanted to do, I was listening to our old episode a couple episodes back, and I wanted to touch on this something from Judge Dredd.
Ooh,
do you mind?
I don't mind. I would love to touch Judge Dredd.
So one of the things you had a problem with was like how they had this mega city and then nothing else outside the city, and like yet they had all the resources to build these skyscrapers with the blast doors and all that, and of course my writer brain got to working on that dilemma, and I was thinking about how that could come to pass. And I realized that what might have happened is they built Megacity 1 pre-nuclear war, right? They built it to basically withstand a nuclear war, and that's just what it did. So up until, whatever year the nuclear war happened, they built these megacities to be, and who knows how they got the materials. We might have learned to mine asteroids by then and get all the materials from, they say one big asteroid has more steel than we've ever used. So maybe or more iron than we've ever used. So maybe they've managed to mine an asteroid or something by the year 2080, and which seems reasonable to me. And then they built these megacities to withstand the nuclear war that everybody was fearful of, and then the nuclear war happened, and so everything that wasn't built to withstand it got destroyed. So that's why they were the only things left.
Okay, so where does your writer brain think the food is coming from? Also space?
No. They've built urban farms. So in these towers, they have basically inside farms that are hydroponic or whatever.
Do you remember SimCity 2000?
No, I never was a fan of SimCity.
Oh, SimCity 2000 was, I think it's probably the best of the genre. It got really weird later, but SimCity 2000 was perfect. And in that they had what were called arcologies, which was basically a tower populated by like 100,000 people, and it had like gardens, and it could produce its own food. It could produce its own power. It basically was a city in a building. And then, of course, if you got far enough in the game, some of the arcologies would actually take off towards space. But I never got that far. I heard about it later. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable explanation. I mean, if you're okay, I'm fine to move on. I just unless you need to challenge that.
I do not need to challenge it. I think that logic speaks for itself.
Great, thank you. But one other thing, wink, wink, he says, one other thing that I wanted to bring up is I did catch a tiny little info drop that you did in that episode where you mentioned that you liked Karl Urban in The Boys. And are you watching The Boys?
Yeah.
That's a superhero show, Matt.
Yeah, I don't understand why you think there's like this black and white line where I will just never ever enjoy a superhero thing. And
your words, basically. You've made it abundantly clear that you don't like any superhero movies.
No, that's not true. I liked Thor. I think it was Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok. Was that Ragnarok? The first Taika Waititi one?
Yeah.
And there was one other one I liked too, but clearly not well enough to remember what it was. But there's a few of them that I like, and I like some of the older ones, right? I like the Tim Burton Batman. I like the Tim Burton Batman.
Batman Returns.
Yeah. Christopher Reeves and Superman. Like, I like some of the older ones. I just don't really like what they've sort of evolved into. And I would say The Boys is an action horror show that has superheroes in it.
But it's also so violent and gory. Like, I would have thought that would turn you off. I like The Boys, mostly. It's not a great show, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, I quite like The Boys. I think it's good.
And I just finished watching Generation V and liked the first season of that kind of a lot.
Yeah, I liked Generation V as well. Although I feel like I feel like there's a good potential for it to go off the rails in the second season. It felt
Yeah.
like they had a nice tight story this season, and I am a little concerned that they're like going to get renewed and not actually have a story to tell.
Sure. Yep. That happens a lot. There was something that popped into the back of my brain when you said that as an example, but I can't remember what it was. But did you? Oh, do you watch? Did you watch Invincible?
I watched Invincible in the sense that it was on, but I was dozing off a lot. Amy liked it quite a bit.
I really liked it better than The Boys.
Yeah,
actually.
I would say I'm the reverse. Invincible was fine to me, but I preferred The Boys.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's some good information for me to stick in my head and carry forward. How would you like to get into the meat of the episode?
Oh, well, I think we should definitely shake things up a bit and do the music first.
Yeah, let's do the music first. Tell me about Quasi.
Quasi.
What's the deal with them?
Quasi is a indie rock band that was formed in the mid-90s. It is only two people, Sam Coombs, who plays a rocksichord, which is a keyboard that is supposed to sound like an electric guitar, but really kind of has its own vibe, and his ex-wife, Janet Weiss, who is a fantastic drummer. She's best known for being in the Riot Girl punk band Sleater-Kinney. This was sort of a side project for her, and now it's her main project because she left Sleater-Kinney a few years ago, and now Sleater-Kinney is a two-piece. They're an indie rock band, but obviously they sound quite a bit different than a lot of them. And then the other big appeal of this music to me is the lyrics. Sam Coombs is a wonderful storyteller. He has really clever ways of talking about the world as it is, the world as it could be, and also just talking about sort of the difficulty of life, I guess. I would say sort of the modern condition he comments on a lot. And I really enjoy it.
Fairly, oftentimes very up to date.
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about doom scrolling and being on social media and TikToks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that I gave you a playlist. And so I actually think that Quasi is best experienced through entire albums, but I wanted to make sure that I got some of those recent songs on here so that you could hear they really do, cover recent topics. So there are a lot of musical freakouts in this. And I was a little concerned when I heard it that you were going to just be like, well, I hate this. So, Travis, did you, in fact, hate this?
Hate's a strong word, Matt. I don't like using the word hate, but this was to me a playlist full of noisy rock, noisy kind of sad rock. Like it was
sad rock.
There was a lot of it was music that was tough to listen to for me. And before I will say that mostly it wasn't for me. And I kind of want to hear, before I say more, what you loved about him. What it is that you like about them.
Well, I think he's just a really clever lyricist. Like, if you look at the song A Fable with No Moral, right? It's talking about a person who is down on his luck, and so he has to sell his soul to pay his rent. And then the rest of the song is him trying to collect on that debt so that he can, continue to live. And it's funny and sad and well done. It's like I like listening to it, but I also, I laugh when I hear some of the lyrics. There's
really?
There's a lyric in there about how Satan drives a Land Rover. I think that's very funny.
Huh. It's funny because I listened to this playlist twice through, and I had so today, and I wanted to wait until today to listen to it again because the first time kind of completely erased itself from my mind. And I don't know if that was because I've been so busy and a little bit stressed and a little bit tired, or if it was because I just didn't care for it. And so my brain was like, nope, don't need to keep that. And the and so listening to it the second time through, I kind of think it was the latter. And although, could be a combination of all of the above. But it was just a lot of things that the songs to me didn't have hooks. And they were kind of more like, here's something that was interesting as an experience. I liked the very beginning of almost all the songs.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the first, few measures, especially when it's just the first instrument that comes in.
The rocksichord, yeah.
Or whatever. Was it always a rocksichord? I don't know, but it sounded different sometimes. And I really and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then it would come in with some other instrument or something that was too loud and obnoxious and noisy rather than complimentary, and it usually kind of checked me out. So that's an interesting experience. There was one song that I liked, and fortunately, it's the longest song. So I'm glad I liked it. You put in A Fable with No Moral, and that has no noisiness in it whatsoever. It's actually just kind of pleasant music. Now, looking back on it, and I went back to listen to that song a third time, just that song, and even now, an hour later, I can't remember what it was. I can't remember.
I know
how it sounded.
all the lyrics to that song. That's what I'm talking about. I went and sold my soul so I could pay my rent. I waited by the mail, but the check was never sent, so I called the devil up, but I just got his machine. I left an angry message, said I gotta have the green. I'm not gonna do the rest of it, but that's funny, right? Like you would call the devil and be like, if you don't send me my money right now, I'm gonna be very upset, right? I just love the idea that there's this Albert Brooks guy who's just really peed off at the devil, and he said he was going to give me this money for my soul, and he just didn't even do it.
That is kind of funny, and if I became familiar with that song more, I can see appreciating it even more. And I did also appreciate that we had yet another vampire reference in this playlist. I don't know if you did that for me or what, but here we are. This is vampire reference number 5 in this podcast, I think, and so that's cool. But I found in general, Matt, I found the songs a little too noisy, a little too. I missed there being some sort of hook. They felt rambling from a musical point of view, and I didn't find anything particularly special about them that made me want to.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So did you do what I told you to do and look up lyrics?
No, I haven't had time. I'm sorry. And this is going to be a common thing with me, and I think I did think about this. This band, especially this playlist, I can see young straight boys listening to this, probably white boys, listening to this song in a club, listening to this band play music and having a great time doing it. But for me, listening to it on my headphones, having it piped directly to my ear without other, kind of atmosphere, I just did not like that experience. So
okay. Yeah. Well, that's
and I think that's a difference between you and I. I think you often like music that is really good in a club because you go to clubs and listen to music.
This is true.
I don't. And one of the things I was going to ask our listeners is to kind of parse that knowledge and recommend music that you think I would like specifically. That is, knowing what we know about what I like about music and how I listen to music and kind of the type of music I like, that happier, kind of more upbeat stuff.
I will say this. There is very little that's upbeat about Quasi. It's a very dark worldview. And it's funny, the last song on the playlist, do you remember what it is?
I Give Up.
Yeah, it's a song called I Give Up. And it really is. It's like, things really stink. I give up, right? Now, keep in mind, that's the end of their second album, and they have 10 albums now. So he clearly did not give up. It was a lie. But I also wanted to ask you, so there's that song Ghost versus Vampire that you called out. And apropos of nothing, what do you think? Ghost versus vampire. Who you got, Travis?
Oh goodness. I guess Ghost.
You think a ghost is gonna beat a vampire?
I think a ghost is as an immaterial thing is essentially eternal, and a vampire as a piece of biology is though long lived, not eternal.
Well,
So-
folks, I think this explains why Travis doesn't like Quasi, because it clearly states in the song that a ghost is no rival for a vampire. So
Yeah,
he
so I mean, it's
disagrees
just
vociferously.
It doesn't help that they're just wrong about things.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. Well, Travis, I think we've got your view on it. I will say, I think, I mean, not to be judgy or anything, but I think you're wrong about this. Like, I think this is very hooky music, right? It is in a layer of, noise that I think causes you to kind of tune out a little bit.
Possibly.
But there are some very clever melodies. Do you remember the song about California at all?
Yeah.
So I find myself back in California. I feel like that's a really lovely little hook, but not good enough for you.
I didn't like it. I didn't particularly like it. I did like California better than the first song, all the same. Which again, but how did you choose the song order, by the way, when you put this because this is a playlist and not an album, so I'm curious about that.
Did try, so All the Same is I guess one of my favorite of their songs, and it's an album opener, so I felt like it does
somebody
have
had already
that sort of
argued that it belonged first.
Yeah, that it belongs first, and so I threw that one on there. California is probably their biggest radio hit, which is to say I heard it on the college radio station when I was
what's funny is I did find it slightly familiar, like I had probably heard it before, and I don't know where I might have done it. Maybe in your room,
maybe
back
in my
college.
dorm room. Yeah, maybe in my dorm
How about
room.
that? That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
If by the way, listeners can find the playlists in the show notes. If you would like to check out any of the music, you can always go to the show notes to listen to the music that we're listening to.
You sure can. All right. Well, Travis, I think we're probably ready to rate. What do you want to give this?
Oh, I don't want to give it this, but I think this is a 3 for me.
A 3.
It's not. I didn't hate it. It's
well,
not
hate's
something
a strong word.
Well, yeah, hate is a strong word, and I think it's just not my type of music. Most of it was too noisy for me, but there was a good song in there that I enjoyed. So, it redeemed it a bit.
So you liked this better than Neutral Milk Hotel?
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to admit, I just wanted to point out once again that Travis gave what is widely considered one of the best albums of the 90s a 2.
I mean, by whom? Whom considers it that?
The people that have the writing sticks that they work on the internet.
Like, what if I were to right now Google best album of the 90s and see what comes up?
You'd probably get Radiohead, OK Computer, but high up on the list for sure would be Neutral Milk Hotel in the Aeroplane
Best
Over the
album
Sea.
of the 90s. Ugh, never mind.
Sure.
From sources across the web, by the way.
From sources across the web.
Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. In the Aeroplane, Neutral Milk Hotel's in there. OK Computer by Radiohead.
The best part is about that, folks, is that he started reading the album title and suddenly realized that he had run into Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't. Portishead, we've done that.
Yes, we have.
Portishead.
That was
Smashing
probably
Pumpkins. What? How come nothing by Didn't Paul Simon do something in the 90s? And
no, Graceland and Rhythm of the Saints are both in the 80s.
not Graceland, but that was Paul Simon. What about Born in England, Made in England by that was 90s.
By who?
By my God, Elton John.
Yeah, no.
Okay, let me just check here. One more thing, and this is getting off the
Yeah,
off
you're
track,
way off
but
the rails here.
I'm just looking at Rolling Stone's list of the, and I got to scroll all
No,
the way
you're
down to
gonna
the
have
bottom
to. Yeah,
to get to
you're
number
gonna have
one.
to go through all the clickbait on the Rolling Stone website.
Ugh, it's too. It's not too bad, but I have to scroll all the way to the bottom. Oh, Slater Kenny's on there, or Slater Kenny.
No, Slater. I think the correct pronunciation is Slater. I've been saying it wrong.
Okay. Nirvana is their best album of the 90s. Huh. Dr. Dre? Wow. Radiohead? Have we listened to Radiohead?
They actually just updated this recently.
Oh, really?
We listened to OK Computer, yeah.
Yeah, that's
episode 20
number
or 30.
3 on their list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then U2, Akchung Baby.
That's fair.
Huh, interesting. I don't think I've maybe heard a couple songs from there probably, but I'm not super familiar with U2 either.
All right.
Well, okay, you've got my
anyways,
rating. What's yours?
My rating for Quasi is an 8. I really love Quasi. I've got a few of their albums. Field Studies and Featuring Birds are 2 of my favorite albums. This playlist is really good. It's way up there for me. It's an 8.
Nice. I like it. I like that we disagree a bit. I would love to get. I think one of the things we've learned from this year is that we have very different tastes in music.
This is true.
And yeah, although I really did when I was young and in college and hanging out in your room playing Civilization, you exposed me to a band called the Vaselines, and I have loved that album. For most of my, I don't listen to it often, but I do occasionally listen to it, and so that's something I never would have listened to had not been for you. So,
and you
I
know
owe
who
for that.
introduced me to that?
My dad?
No, Kurt
Oh.
Cobain. Who?
No.
Yes, Kurt Cobain.
In person?
No.
Did
Kurt
you and
Cobain-
Kurt Cobain have a podcast?
No,
In
Kurt
the
Cobain
90s?
was a huge fan of the Vaselines, and he covered several of their songs on their sort of Rarities album, B-Sides and
Oh.
Rarities album called Incesticide that came out between Nevermind and In Utero.
Interesting.
And-
Was one of them, you think you're a man, but you're
Yes.
only a boy? I'll bet. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I've never really listened to Nevermind. I probably know the one of the songs from it.
You do probably know one of the songs.
Yeah. Don't understand the words. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you don't need to assign me that. I think I know
I'm
how
not
I would
gonna
probably
assign you
rate that.
Yeah. I'm not going to assign you. Never mind.
Great.
Anyways, well, Travis, I think we should get on to the movie here. Tell me about Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods is an interesting movie. It is it's a 2011 science fiction comedy horror. It was directed by Drew Goddard, who was it was his directorial debut. It was written by him and Joss Whedon and produced by Joss Whedon. The two of them worked together on Buffy the Vampire Slayer a lot, and so it has that very Buffy-esque vibe as far as the dialogue, and it's very pithy, quippy dialogue. But this movie has a bunch of stuff that I really love, and a couple, like 2 things that I one failing and one thing that I hate, right? And so it's an interesting mix of things for me, and but I want you to experience it and have us get a chance to talk about it. But it starred Chris Hemsworth as one of the hapless teens who go to the cabin in the woods, and Fran Kranz, who I mentioned last week. He was from a show called Dial House, which I really like. I also happened to have met him at Acme Comedy Theater when I was there. And also Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford as kind of a pair in this movie, and I don't know. I really like a lot about this movie. I guess I can tell you more about what it is, or do you want to talk about it, or how do you want to approach this?
No, I'll start talking about it. So the thing, for one thing, I thought this movie was more recent than 2012.
Right? It feels like it should be 2011.
2011,
10, yeah.
And I remember hearing about it at the time it came out and being like, oh, it's a deconstruction of horror movies. And I don't care about deconstructions of horror movies because I was not a horror fan at the time. I wasn't even really a movie fan at the time. And so it was always pretty low on my list. And of course, I had seen. Now, is this before or after The Avengers?
This was before The Avengers.
Okay. So I did see The Avengers, which everybody, like they do every year, they were like, it's the best superhero movie of all time. And this is back when I was still giving superhero movies a chance. And so I saw The Avengers and I really hated it. And I was like, oh,
wow,
okay.
You really hated The Avengers?
Yeah, it was boring. I didn't like it.
Interesting. Okay.
And so, so again, that didn't make me want to watch this movie. But this is a really, really interesting film because it obviously starts with like a classic horror movie setup. 5 kids go up into the mountains to a cabin for the weekend, and bad stuff happens. And almost immediately you're thrown into this world where something is going on that's more than that, and you don't know quite what it is. And I remember saying to my wife about 25 minutes into this movie, how I feel about this movie is all going to depend on the payoff, right? Like, is this is the explanation for these sort of weird scenes gonna pay off and make sense, and is it gonna be good?
We can set up for those who haven't seen this movie, like my mom, you're probably not gonna watch it, but you can know that the setup is that there is a organization that is basically setting up these kids as sacrifices in order to keep the old gods at bay, who threaten to destroy the world, and it's kind of a human sacrifice story, but like little subsets of organizations from different places around the country all do a sacrifice a year in order to keep the gods at bay, and only one of them has to work. And the stakes of this movie is that every one of them has failed this year, and our group here in the U.S. is the last group, so they have to succeed in sacrificing these kids, and so you get to see the kind of the behind the scenes of how they push these kids to the cabin and set them up in the cabin to make bad decisions and to be to essentially deserve to be sacrificed. Like the kids have to make choices, morally corrupt choices, in order to deserve being sacrificed. It's weird, but anyway, that's the setup. That's the real like weird setup of this story.
Well, that's the payoff actually, and I feel like I was on board with that. That was really good. The old gods are going to wake up if we don't successfully sacrifice these kids. So the movie was really good. It plays with the ideas of the different characters and the roles that they have that are sort of iconic, and the fact that different cultures have different roles. Sort of like there's very famously a Japanese site that is also trying to sacrifice a bunch of people, but they're totally different from the people that the Americans sacrifice. And this is kind of a reference to the difference in horror films, the horror genre in Japan and the US. And I thought that was very clever. The idea that there are certain rules that you have to follow in terms of the sacrifice, but also that they are culturally specific was really clever and interesting to me.
Yeah. And also the kids choose, in our culture, for some reason, the kids choose the form of their sacrifice. Like, they choose the form of the monster that's going to that's going to kill them. Somehow, like they go into the basement of the cabin and there's all these relics, and whichever one they end up choosing, that's how they end up dying.
Yeah, it's almost like a Hellraiser situation where you're having, like, there's something that you're drawn to, and then that ends up being your downfall, right?
Well, there was actually the Hellraiser reference. They had a ball instead of a cube that was essentially the same thing as the puzzle box in Hellraiser.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and obviously you noticed the demon guy character with the buzzsaw blades in his head. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's really, it's all just really well done. It's pretty well put together. I did have like one really, so you know me, I love to nitpick these things.
Yeah,
right?
let's nitpick
And
because I have a couple myself.
The nit that I have to pick is the idea that there's a guard station that has a big red button that says "Do not touch" on it. It doesn't really say "Do not touch." It says like "Release all the monsters." And I'm trying to think of when you're building this facility filled with mythological monsters that you've captured.
I think it says "Purge" on it, right?
It says "Purge" on it, yeah. And you're building this facility and you're like, what if maybe someday it becomes vitally important that we release every single monster all at the same time, just right into our facility, like not even out into the earth or into the area where the cabin is. We're just gonna release them all right here. And we're gonna clearly label that button and make it really easy to push.
And just one button, right? It's not like a dual button system where two people have to push it at the same time after they turned keys.
Right. There's a switch and a button. There's a dead man switch and a button. And that's So that I think really bothered me. But one of the reasons it bothered me is because the movie plays by its own rules all the rest of the time. It really does like play fair with the situation. And so to have that be like, oh, you wrote yourself into a corner and this is how you wrote yourself out of it, felt like such a lazy cheat. Right?
That's interesting because I hadn't ever thought about that particular thing, but you are absolutely right. To me, from a writing standpoint, it's just fulfilling the Chekhov's gun problem, where you see all these, and as a viewer, it's just super satisfying to see them all in action. But you are absolutely right; it doesn't really make sense for that button to exist in this world. There are a couple other things that I had issues with, like how does that force field through the canyon work exactly? Like how.
Well, they invented that.
Yeah, they invented a whatever device. Thank you. And then, so I get that. That's even not one of my problems. I can accept that in this world where, where necessity dictates, you can probably.
Well, and I mean, mythological creatures really do exist in this world, and all sorts of like magical science fictional things are real in this world. So a force field doesn't, I don't think, stand out as like way outside the pale of everything else that they've done.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to hear my big grievance?
Oh, do I? Absolutely, I do.
So before I say that, I will say that I enjoy so much about this movie. The acting is fantastic. I love how game all the characters are to be in this world and like really get into it. There are a couple of actory things that are kind of like okay, but mostly it's really good. My big problem, and we've talked about this before, and in fact recently, I think, is my dislike of nihilism in movies.
Oh, I knew you were going to call this out, and
Do you disagree? So at the end of the movie, the old gods wake up and everyone dies. The whole plot of the movie is we have to sacrifice these kids, or the old gods. We have to sacrifice these 4 kids, or teens, in order to save billions of lives.
Yep.
And not only do I not like that they ended up going with it's worse to kill 2 kids than to save 6 billion or 7 billion lives angle, but they could have done it in a way that I feel was satisfying. And still true to the characters and kept the characters pure, but still saved the world. Okay,
tell me that, because I'm curious.
Okay, so they lay down the rule that the virgin doesn't have to die. So you mentioned that all the teens are all kind of separated into different character tropes, right? Archetypes. So you've got the jock, you've got the harlot, you've got the virgin, you've got the jester, and you've got the something else. The rule is that what's that?
The other guy.
The other guy. The rule is that the virgin doesn't have to die as long as she's the last to die, right? If she dies, she has to be last. And so it comes down to the jester and the virgin are the only two people left, and they've made it into into this underground lair where all the monsters are running amok. All the monsters have been released, everyone's dying, and they've gone down into the deep, deep lair where they can actually see down into the pit where the old gods are kind of rumbling and ready to rise at the stroke of midnight. It's a giant pit, and there are monsters running around. There's a werewolf that comes down and at one point, the girl holds the guy at gunpoint and is going to kill him because she's convinced if she doesn't, the world's going to end. And she decides not to, which is great. Keep her character pure. Don't give her that guilt. But I think it would have been perfectly fine to have one of those bat creatures fly in and knock the jester guy off into the pit. And like have us have a denouement where they're like, "Wow, thanks for not killing me. I think I agree that it's better that we not play this game and let 6 billion people die." And because as soon as they say that, it makes them culpable, and that's their sin, and then they can die satisfyingly. Or just the one guy, just the jester, off into the pit. And dies, and then the world is saved. She's left with the guilt that she would have killed him, or she was going to kill him, but also didn't kill him, and so she would have been willing to sacrifice everybody. So every person she sees in the world from now on, she essentially was willing to kill that person. I think that's a better ending than telling the viewer, essentially, that they're not worth saving.
Well, I don't think the movie takes the idea that these people are right in the end, but I do think that these two characters have been through an experience which is extremely intense. They're still experiencing it. They're not in sort of a default mode, right? They're in an extremely heightened emotional state, and they've just learned that through no real fault of their own, right? Like supposedly it's that they made some moral choice, but really they were like set up and, somebody put a crack pipe in their hand and lit the crack rock and put it up to their mouth and said, "Now inhale," right?
Right.
And then they inhaled,
yes.
right?
They were chosen and then kind of manipulated into making these bad decisions. Yeah.
Right. And I think it's perfectly valid, a perfectly valid choice to be like, I don't want to play anymore. I don't want to play anymore, right?
Yeah, I get it, and I think they could have done that and still saved and still had that decision be theirs, but then also have the movie save the day essentially, and so that
right. And I think it's so
like
rare. It's so rare for a movie to not save the day. People, I mean, there's a lot of auteurs who will claim that, I don't, happy endings are bourgeois and I don't want them or whatever. But the fact is the vast majority of movies end up with, at the very least, a mitigated happy ending. And the fact that this movie is just straight up, no, black screen, go, I really appreciated that. It's a different choice and it's justified by the movie, right? It's not a nihilistic ending for the sake of a nihilistic ending. It's a nihilistic ending that makes sense in the context of the movie and in the context of the world. And if that's true, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah. I think my thing is that in the context of the story, nothing matters because everything's destroyed, right? And so no decision anybody made matters because there's no consequences, essentially, because everyone's dead. I mean, the consequence is everyone's dead. But you know what? I like people living with consequences of their actions. So I like the idea of her having to live with her decisions if the world continues to go on. It's a lot like the ending to The Mist, where that guy has to live with the decision he made to shoot everyone, including his son, in a world that suddenly is going to go on.
Yeah, but I hated the ending of The Mist.
I know you did. So that's a big difference between us. I feel like I just want decisions to matter, and I feel like they didn't because everyone died. Do you know?
Yeah, that feels like a reverse take to me. I feel like the
Maybe.
decision definitely mattered because
I
everybody
mean,
died.
it matters because everyone died.
Yeah.
But I mean, it also doesn't matter because everyone's dead. I feel like
Nobody got
if I'm dead, I
punished.
don't care what happened to me. Like,
Well, see,
because I'm
this is
dead.
because yeah, that's fair.
You
I
know?
think in this world, heaven and hell, in all likelihood, exist. Given all the other things that do exist, in all likelihood, these people are getting eternally punished.
Maybe. Well, speaking
Certainly,
of,
Bradley
as
Whitford
before
is.
we run out of time, my one other little quibble is that when Fran Kranz is being dragged off by the zombie, he's like this. He's
Yes.
the stoner character, the
Thank you.
jester. He's being dragged off by the zombie through the woods, and later on he comes back and says, "Oh, I had to dismember her with a trowel or something like that." I didn't like that because there was no trowel. And all they would have had to do to fix that and to make it actually more satisfying to me is to, as he's being dragged off, be reaching for anything and have him grab something and go, "A trowel?" And then kind of like, and then cut, like disappointed that it wasn't an actual weapon, and
Right.
then cut away and we assume he's dead.
Yeah.
And then have him come back and be like, I had to dismember her with a trowel would have been the zombie. It is would have been funnier for me, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's just one thing. Like, I mean, far be it from me to offer writing notes to Joss Whedon, who I think is a brilliant writer, but that would have been one thing for me.
Yeah. No, I really, really liked this movie. The gore, the gore is really there, right? Like you do have to have a lot of it is cartoonish, but you really do have to have a tolerance for gore to watch this movie, which I have built up over the course of this year. I didn't find myself watching through webbed fingers or anything like that.
Good.
But it's a
Look how
it's a
you're
lot.
growing.
It's a lot of blood and a lot of gore.
Yeah,
So
it is, and a lot of it is in the last act, especially once the panic button is pushed and all the monsters are purged. That's where it gets real gory. One thing I do want to say is when the first time I saw this movie, when the voice of the director comes out, when you'd hear the director's voice, and it's just so distinctly belonging to Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
And I squealed, and you know very well
Yeah.
my adoration of Sigourney Weaver, and
Yeah.
I loved that they gave her the cameo as the person running it all.
yeah, that was fantastic. It was really,
yeah.
really good.
Yeah, she's great, and of course she gets hers in the end too. So
Yeah.
everybody dies.
Everybody dies.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add before we do ratings?
No, I think we should fire it up.
All right. What's your rating?
This is a 9 for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah, a couple of quibbles which keep it from being a 10 for me, but it's funny, it's scary, it's thrilling. It makes you think, but not like too hard, right? You don't spend the entire movie going, "What the heck is going on?" You spend like the first quarter of the movie saying, "What the heck is going on?"
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
That's
So,
great.
Yeah, this is a 9 for me.
I love that. And I agree with you. This is a super clever movie, and it's clever from the first moment. Even the way the opening credits work, and the way that they juxtapose the two different worlds that we're watching until they collide is pretty great. However, I am going to go a little bit lower than you and give it an 8 because of now it's rewatchable. I've probably watched this movie maybe now the four times. And if not more, but I think that ending continues to anger me, and so I'm gonna give it an 8.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Whew, goodness. Well, I know I have a related movie I'm going to give you sometime in the future, but not this next time. Do you know what you're going to give me?
I absolutely know what I'm going to give you, Travis.
Mm-hmm. What is that?
Well, are you familiar with the band The Linda Lindas?
No, I'm not.
You're not familiar with the Linda Lindas. Well,
Should I be?
You absolutely should be. They're super good. The Linda Lindas are a teenage girl punk band from Los Angeles. They're two sisters, their cousin, and a family friend. They played in a cover band for a few years, sort of getting their chops going, and then they started writing original songs. And in 2021, during the pandemic, they performed a song they wrote called Racist Sexist Boy at the LA Library, and it went viral, and they became, I wouldn't say super popular, but very popular. They've released their debut album. It's what the playlist is this week, is their debut album. Ooh. And they've actually toured. They toured with Paramore this year, who we have discussed.
Yep.
On a big arena tour. And then next summer, they're coming back to Milwaukee in support of Green Day, which is just like, they are playing some huge shows for a bunch of, I think they must be like 15 or 16 now, maybe 17.
Wow.
Very, very young kids.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. That's pretty cool.
I mean, yeah, it is really cool. I would say this is straight ahead. Some people call it garage punk or pop. I wouldn't say it's quite pop punk, but it's got pop elements to it. But you don't really like punk most of the time, but I think you might like this.
Okay. All right. Well, I am anxious to try it out, as always.
Yeah. I think the future of music is in good hands with these young women.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm actually really excited to hear something that's essentially brand new and a little bit undiscovered. Yeah. I mean, undiscovered by me, at least.
I was going to say, it's undiscovered by you. They have like 50,000 subscribers on YouTube Music. They're actually
cool. I've almost got 50,000 subscribers. Just take away a zero and we're there.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I am going to give you a drama this weekend, since we've done some comedy, we've done some horror. Yeah. I'm going to give you a drama. I don't remember, did you say whether or not you had seen Brokeback Mountain?
I have not seen Brokeback Mountain.
Okay, I didn't think so. And so we're going to go ahead and give you a big old gay movie. One of the first kind of big, like, studio level gay themed movies. And so this is a movie from 2005 that was directed by Ang Lee and starred Heath Ledger, obviously before he died, and Jake Gyllenhaal as cowboys who fall in love. And it also has Anne Hathaway and Michelle Williams and Anna Faris. Like, it's got a pretty... Linda Cardellini's in it, and Randy Quaid. But... Poor Randy Quaid. But yeah, it's an interesting movie, and I have only seen it one, maybe two times. I think only once, though. And so I am anxious to revisit this movie with you and see what I think. But so that's the preface. This is not one of my favorite movies. I do remember liking it. I remember being moved by it, but I'm also interested to see how because it comes from a time when playing gay or being an out actor was still not okay in Hollywood. Right. Yeah. And so I'm really anxious to see how that translates to less than 20 years later, when we are completely, I mean, not completely not that, but much less in that world.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal are obviously very famously straight. And I don't know if this is where Heath Ledger met Michelle Williams, because they were married, right?
Oh, I don't know. I tend to be very unaware of those kind of things.
Oh, yeah. I believe they have one or two children together, and she is his widow. But anyways, but what I was going to say is you think of like Tu Wong Fu, which came out in 1995 and had Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and
John
Leguizamo, all very famously straight men playing drag queens and gay drag queens, right? They are sort of doing that same thing, right? And of course, Robin Williams in The Birdcage. Did anybody know that Nathan Lane was gay when The Birdcage came out?
I mean, I think we all knew, but he wasn't out at the time. He wasn't publicly out.
Yeah, and it's that funny line that you used to have to walk where, you could be like, Freddie Mercury famously didn't come out until like 3 days before his death, right?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I have AIDS. Oh, I'm gay. Oh, and then he died, right? It was like, and anybody who was alive in the 80s, probably should have known that he was gay. But of course, because of the lack of visibility of, LGBTQ voices in that time, it wasn't necessarily coded as gay. That sort of behavior wasn't coded as gay. And so you look at, Tu Wong Fu and you look at Brokeback Mountain, you're like, yeah, this is, straight people passing as gay, when you would never give these roles to a gay actor. There weren't very many out gay actors in Hollywood in 2005, which sounds crazy to say.
Yeah, and certainly none with any cachet or
with any cachet
marketability
at all. Yeah. And so I would agree with you. This is a fascinating artifact. I am really excited to see where all the 10,000 memes come from. I got to admit, I do feel like I have seen this movie, even though I haven't seen this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure. Let's do it. My nephews are going to be here this weekend, so this should be fun.
Oh, great. Watch it with them. How old are they?
12 and 15.
Oh, okay. That's old enough.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about it and revisit it myself. So that's great. If you, the viewer or listener of this podcast, would like to listen or watch along with us, feel free, and then let us know what you think by writing us an email to exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com or finding us on Facebook at Exposing Ourselves. And do us a big favor, would you? And go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, scroll down to the bottom of the podcast page and rate us, all right? We actually got a very good rating recently that I was happy to see, and we were, someone who I didn't know rated us
10
5
stars?
stars.
Oh,
no, it was 5. It's a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. But they rated us 5 stars and left a very good comment. And so I do read those. And incidentally, we actually did get an email, if we have time to address it, from Kevin Novacek about the Phoenix episode.
Oh, yeah. Good.
He says we didn't post on the Facebook page, so he just wanted to send an email. And Travis asked about similar artists, and he saw Phoenix live when they toured this album that we listened to, and Two Door Cinema Club was supposed to open. The lead singer was sick, so the local band filled in, and they are definitely a great band worth listening to. I first heard of Phoenix when the prior album came out. He heard it in Urban Outfitters, of all places. Now, what's funny is I don't know if he's recommending Two Door Cinema Club or the leads or the band that filled in for them.
Okay.
Or is he saying the lead singer of Phoenix was sick and so Two Door Cinema Club filled in for Phoenix? I don't know. But do you know Two Door Cinema Club?
I've heard of them, and I've heard a couple of their songs, but I'm not familiar.
All right, maybe check them out and see if you think they're worth recommending. And he has not seen Dread, but some of the descriptions reminded him of Snowpiercer, which is a movie you should watch, and I definitely will put that on the list. Have you seen Snowpiercer?
I have not seen Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer? Yeah, Snowpiercer is very good. And then he mentioned that the Phoenixes had a connection to Sofia Coppola and the movie The Virgin Suicides, which I might be interested in, but he is wrong. I am not at all interested in that fact. All right.
Well, thanks very much for your email, Kevin Novacek.
Yeah, thanks,
we
Kev.
appreciate it.
Thanks. And Matt, thank you for exposing yourself to me.
Well, you're welcome, Travis. Thank you for exposing yourself to me.
You're welcome.